Test 1 2 1 2. Oh my god. Hello, 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 hello. Hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Er það virkali? Sest ég, annars sé svo sem alveg kameruna, það er bara svona, hér.
Yo, Akon. What up, D? Coming to what, man? I got a lot on my mind, man. I'm gonna let y'all go ahead, man. All right. Come on. All right. All right. Let's do it. Yo, this one here goes out to all my players out there, man. You know, got that one good girl, dog, that's always been there, man. Like, took all the bullshit. And one day she can't take it no more and decided to leave. still stuck around and stayed by my side. What really hurt me is I broke your heart, baby. You took the pill and I had no other. I really wanna make things right, cause without you in my life, girl, I'm so lonely, Mr. Lonely. I have nobody on my own, girl. So lonely, Mr. Lonely. I have nobody to call my own, baby. In all of the world, ain't never met a girl that could take the things that you've been through. Never thought the day would come where you would get up and run and I would be out chasing you. 'Cause ain't nowhere in the globe I'd rather be. Ain't no one in the globe I'd rather see than the girl of my dreams that made me be so happy, but now so lonely. So lonely, Mr. Lonely. I have nobody on my own, no. So lonely, Mr. Lonely. I have nobody on my own, girl. Never thought that I'd be alone. I didn't think you'd be gone this long. I just want you to call my phone. Stop playing, girl, and come on home. Baby girl, I didn't mean to shout. I want me and you to work it out. I never wish to ever hurt my baby. And it's driving me crazy, cause I'm so lonely. Mr. Lonely. Have nobody on my own. So lonely. Mr. Lonely. Have nobody on my own, girl. So lonely, so lonely, Mr. Lonely, so lonely, so lonely, so lonely, so lonely, Mr. Lonely. Damn all these beautiful girls. They only wanna do you dirt. They'll have you suicidal, suicidal when they say it's over. Sean Kingston. You're way too beautiful, girl. That's why it'll never work. You have me suicidal, suicidal when you say it's over. Damn all these beautiful girls. They only wanna do you dirt. They'll have you suicidal, suicidal when they say it's over. See, it started at the park, used to chill after dark. Ooh, when you took my heart, that's when we fell apart. Cause we both thought that love lasts forever. Lasts forever. They say we're too young to get ourselves sprung. Oh, we didn't care. We made it very clear. And they also said that we couldn't last together. Last together. See, it's very divine. You're one of a kind, but you mash up my mind. You have to get declined. Oh, Lord. My baby is driving me crazy. You're way too beautiful, girl. That's why it'll never work. You have me suicidal, suicidal when you say it's over. Damn all these beautiful girls. They only wanna do you dirt. They'll have you suicidal, suicidal when they say it's over. It was back in '99, watching movies all the time. Ooh, and I went away for doing my first crime. And I never thought that we was gonna see each other. See each other. And then I came out, mommy moved me down south. Oh, I ain't with my girl, oh, I You're dating other guys, you're telling me lies. Oh, I can't believe what I'm seeing with my eyes. I'm losing my mind, and I don't think it's clever. You're way too beautiful, girl. That's why it'll never work. You have me suicidal, and they say it's over. Soldier Boy in it, oh, watch it crack that, watch it up, watch it crack that Soldier Boy, Superman, and watching you, and watching you, and watching you.
Who is Soldier Boy? What in the heck is that dance?
Soldier Boy?
You!
Soldier Boy, tough. Hey, I got this new dance for y'all called the Soldier Boy. You gotta punch, then crank back 3 times from left to right. Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me roll? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? That Superman, that now why me crank that Soldier? 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 Now what? Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me roll? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? That Superman, that now why me crank that Soldier? 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 Now what? Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me lean that? Why me rock? Superman, that yeah, why me crank that Robocop? Super friend, now why me jocking on them, hate them, man. When I do that Soldier Boy, I lean to the left, then crank that thing now. I'm jocking on you, and if we get the fight, then you catch me at your local party, yes, I crank it every day. Haters getting mad, cause I got me some baby, mate. Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me roll? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? That Superman, that now why me crank that Soldier? 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 Now what? Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me roll? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? That Superman, that now why me crank that Soldier? 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 Now what? I'm bouncing on my toes. Why me super so yeah? I'm next to A-Rab and he gon' crank it up for sure. Haters wanna beat me, Soldier Boy. I'm the man. They be looking at my neck, saying it's doable. Bang, man. Why me do? Yeah. Let get to it. No, you can't do it like me, yo. So don't do it like me. Oh, I seen you try to do it like me. Man, that damn was ugly. Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me roll? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? That Superman, that now why me crank that Soldier? 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 Now what? Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me roll? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? That Superman, that now why me crank that Soldier? 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 Now what? I'm too fresh, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me crank that Roosevelt and super soak that? Super soak that. Super soak that. Super soak that. Super soak that. I'm too fresh now. Why me shuffle? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? Now Superman. 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 Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me roll? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? That Superman, that now why me crank that Soldier? 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 Now what? Soldier Boy, I'm in it. Why me crank it? Why me roll? Why me crank that Soldier Boy? That Superman, that now why me crank that Soldier? 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 Now what?
it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. When the pigs try to get at you, park it like it's hot. Park it like it's hot. Park it like it's hot. And if it get an attitude, pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot. I got the rollie on my arm and I'm pouring Sean down and I'm full of this, cause I got it going on.
I'm a nice dude. It's a nice treat. See these ice cubes. See these ice creams. Eligible bachelor. $1 million bowl. That's whiter than what's in your throat. Phantom. Exterior like fish eggs. The interior like this red. I can exercise you. This could be your phys ed. Cheat on your man, man. That's how you get it. Killer with the B. Killers in the street. To make you feel like you're chilling in the heat. So don't try to run up on my ear talking all that past me. Trying to ask me. When my thing gon' pass me. You should think about it. Take a second. Matter of fact, you should take 4B and think before you make a little skateboard key.
When the pimp's in the crib, ma, drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. When the pigs try to get at you, park it like it's hot. Park it like it's hot. Park it like it's hot. And if it get an attitude, pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot. I got the rollie on my arm and I'm pouring Sean down and I'm full of this, cause I got it going on.
I'm a gangster, y'all knew that. The big boss dog, yeah, I had to do that. I keep a flag hanging out my backside. Be on the left side, yeah, that's the side. Ain't no other way to play the game the way I cut so much you thought I was a DJ. 2, 1, yep, 3. SC and double O, Ego double G. I can't fake it, just break it. And when I take it, see, I specialize in making all the girls get naked. So bring your friends, all of y'all come inside. We got a world premiere right here, like get lost. So don't change the diesel, turn it up a little. I got a living room full of fine dime bristles, waiting on the pistol, the diesel, and the shizzle. G's to the blizzard, now ladies, see we kiss 'em. When the pimp's in the crib, ma, drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. When the pigs try to get at you, park it like it's hot. Park it like it's hot. Park it like it's hot. And if it get an attitude, pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot. I got the rollie on my arm and I'm pouring Sean down and I'm full of this, cause I got it going on. I'm a bad boy, but a lot of drive my own cars and my own clothes. I hang out tough. I'm a real boss. Big Snoop Dogg, yeah, he's so sharp. On the TV screen and in the magazines. If you play me close, oh, you gotta go. So you wanna back? But now, stop that. Shoes, now I'm on the road. Your family's crying, and you on the news. They can't find you, they miss you. It's like remind you, only to twist you. Whip you, dip you, and flip. The dance to the music we too. Subscribe, get your issue. Baby, come close. Let me see how you get low. When the pimp's in the crib, ma, drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. When the pigs try to get at you, park it like it's hot. Park it like it's hot. Park it like it's hot. And if it get an attitude, pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot. Pop it like it's hot. I got the rollie on my arm and I'm pouring Sean down and I'm for this, cause I got it going on.
Yeah, you know what it is. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. Yeah, you know what it is. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. Yeah, you know what it is. Everything I do it big. Yeah, screaming that's that. When I pulled off the lot, that's that. Reppin' my town, you see me, you know everything. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I put it down from the whip to my diamonds all in black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
Big Snoop Dogg and Wiz Khalifa. See, on the West Coast, I'm the big chief. The Grim Reaper. Maybe that bring me back. Yellow like still a logo in the bag. We banging out that Taylor game. dub to your face, baby, till you say my name. Don't get your click served. So much black and yellow, you would think I was from Pittsburgh. Inchurn, get churned.
Yeah, you know what it is. Everything I do it big. Yeah, screaming that's nuts. When I pulled off the lot, that's nuts. Reppin' my town, your city, you know everything. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
I'm a bumblebee, lit up like a Christmas tree. Drinking Hennessy, black, I'm from Tennessee. Juicy J, make the way on my own too. Quarter meal, quarter phantom, bitch, I own you. And they go for her jig that I'm fucking with. Black and yellow bitches all around me, yeah, I did. In they purse, gotta get that reimbursed on the bills. And that purple pint of serves. And I stay Louis down to the socks. Rings and watch, weed and Glock. Beans the pop, my fans swole with them rubber band knots. I'm getting old with them rubber bands not, nigga.
Yeah, you know what it is. Everything I do it big. Yeah, screaming that's nuts. When I pulled off the lot, that's nuts. Reppin' my town, your city, you know everything. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
Catch me in my Lamborghini, black and yellow, black and yellow. I can rock it on the beat up. Acapella, sideways in the turning lane. Fire flame, I be burning main. Let it flame, about to hurt the game. Took a break for a while, I've been learning things. I learned how to tell a nigga fuck you then. Black and yellow, black and yellow. All I do is fucking win. I told you, now I'm on. You thought it was over. You thought I was gone. I'm going in, you don't have to let me. Back from the dead like a Machiavelli.
You know what it is. Everything I do it big. Yeah, screaming that's nuts. When I pulled off the lot, that's nuts. Reppin' my town, your city, you know everything. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
Black and yellow, all black and yellow. See me now, they treating me like I'm somebody special. Smoking on that good, know it's me. Soon as they smell it, you can chill. I'm the one who get it, not the one who sell it. Grind every day. I'm falling, I can't help it. Niggas on that bullshit, my pockets full of Celtics. And them niggas hating on us, get our best wishes. In the club, you ain't even on the guest list, bitch. Sound like you need to get your weight up. Go to sleep rich and count another million when I wake up. They wondering how I do my thing. 2 words, Taylor Gang, remix, G shit. The champagne's poured, nigga, the weed's lit. Lil' mama clothes falling like the leaves in the fall. Ain't worry about your friends, so bring them all.
Yeah, you know what it is. Everything I do it big. Yeah, screaming that's nuts. When I pulled off the lot, that's nuts. Reppin' my town, your city, you know everything. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
I've been running these meetings for quite a while and just sort of in the background. I think you know what I'm talking about. Jim, listen, I gotta call you back. All right.
Candy do it, how I do it. J's on my feet, J's on my feet, J's on my feet. So get like me. J's on my feet, J's on my feet, J's on my feet. So get like me.
I be in the club, standing on the couch, in the wolf place, like it's my house. Drinking out the bottle, I got no respect. Looking like a model, you just gotta check. I back it up, cause I don't give a fuck. If you a lame, that's a shame you can't hang with. I'm MC Hammer fly, you can't touch. Jay so fly, I should work it like but I'm a Jamie to dance the whole night away. I'm naughty by nature, like I'm hip-hop parade. My hands in the sky, I wave 'em from side to side. My feet on the floor, I'm about to turn up now. I'm in the club, high up first, put some shades on. Tatted up, mini skirt, with my J's on.
J's on my feet, J's on my feet, J's on my feet. So get like me. J's on my feet, J's on my feet, J's on my feet. So get like me.
I be rocking J's or I be rocking Taylors. I got lots of flavors. My kick game is major. More kicks than the players. Call me up, I'm scoring. Hit it like a free throw. Tongue out like I'm Jordan. Mally, come swing the thing right by me. Got a joint if you wanna get stoned. Got choppers if they wanna try me. Pro athlete, I'm not no wannabe. Waitress asked how many bottles, I said 23.
But I'm a Jamie to dance the whole night away. I'm naughty by nature, like I'm hip-hop parade. My hands in the sky, I wave 'em from side to side. My feet on the floor, I'm about to turn up now. I'm in the club, high up first, put some shades on. Tatted up, mini skirt, with my J's on.
J's on my feet, J's on my feet, J's on my feet. So get like me. J's on my feet, J's on my feet, J's on my feet. Yes, sir. So get like me. I stay showing out. My kick game is a beast. I got 30 pair of J's that ain't even been released. Blue Game 12, Space Jam 11. On the hype P6, they gon' need a paramedic. Turn up, turn up, turn up. I get trippy, I stay live. All this purple in my cup, match them great vibes. I'm so high, I got 3 bitches that go by. I'm so fly, I'm getting head like a blow dry.
But I'm a Jamie to dance the whole night away. I'm naughty by nature, like I'm hip-hop parade. My hands in the sky, I wave 'em from side to side. My feet on the floor, I'm about to turn up now. I'm in the club, high up first, put some shades on. Tatted up, mini skirt, with my J's on.
J's on my feet, J's on my feet, J's on my feet. So get like me. J's on my feet, J's on my feet, J's on my feet. So get like me.
I be everywhere, everybody know me. Super fresh with a dope style. Honey on my wrist, couple carrots on my neck. Givenchy, keep the chickens in check. All these car keys, drive the chickens to my crib. Drew Hill, got somebody sleeping on my bed. She give me IQ, that means she get ahead. I just give her beats, I don't give her bread. Cause
we be in the club, bottles on deck, and goddamn it, I'm feeling myself. Cause I'ma get it up, and I'ma throw it out like goddamn it, I'm feeling myself. Look up in the mirror look at me. The mirror be like, baby, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, you the shit, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, you the shit.
I be everywhere, everybody know me. Catch me in the club, 100 bottles on me. I get busy like a one line. And the drop get head, baby, never mind. We getting money while you playing with it. Pool in the crib, you can land a water plane in it. Slick Rick looking at the mirror. Big Daddy came through like Shakira. 1.5 custom made car. Me and Will table looking like the bar. Love that, that's my pride. Now I don't give a fuck, that's my pride.
And I don't give a fuck, that's my whole MO. I rock the whole globe with no problemo. Been rocking coast, my first demo. And now I'm banging hoes in the Continental. And now they see me sliding on my dope ride. I open up the doors, suicide. I came from the bottom, the suicide. I made it to the top cause I do it fly. Feeling fucking lucky like the fucking Irish. I see the whole game from my third iris. I tour the whole world like a dirty pirate. To give the whole club some Miley Cyrus.
Now everybody tripping like they poppin' Molly. Up in the club is where you find me. I do it real big, never do it tiny. If you bout the bullshit, please don't remind me. I step in this mother just to make it work. I get on the floor just to make that booty twerk. Shake that shoot like an expert. Shake that shoot like an expert.
I be everywhere, everybody know me. Super fresh with a dope style. Honey on my wrist, couple carrots on my neck. Givenchy, keep the chickens in check. All these car keys, drive the chickens to my crib. Drew Hill, got somebody sleeping on my bed. She give me IQ, that means she in the head. I just give her beats, I don't give her bread. Cause we be in the club, bottles on deck, and goddamn it, I'm feeling myself. Cause I'ma get it up, and I'ma throw it out like goddamn it, I'm feeling myself. Up in the mirror look at me. The mirror be like, baby, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, you the shit, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, you the shit, yes sir.
Doobie in my hand, rollie on my wrist. Got a bottle of that $1,000 champagne in my fist. Woman in your dreams, sleep in my bed, so now I don't need your brains, I need my ass kissed. But all my homies like, give me some head. Smoke joints till our ass turned Indian red. Take shots till our chest burn. We got papers, bottles, mollies, all this, let's get it started. The bigger the bill, the bigger you ball, the bigger the watch, the bigger the car, the bigger the star. The bigger the chain, the farther you go, you already know. The bigger the bank, that's more hoes, nigga. And now to spent $250,000 on clothes, copping in most schools and putting foreigns on the road. Real talking, if my fuel get low, I'll roll up another joint, take a shot and reload. Pow!
I be everywhere, everybody know me. Super fresh with a dope style. Honey on my wrist, couple carrots on my neck. Givenchy, keep the chickens in check. All these car keys, drive the chickens to my crib. Drew Hill, got somebody sleeping on my bed. She give me IQ, that means she give me head. I just give her beats, I don't give her bread. Cause we be in the club, bottles on deck, and goddamn it, I'm feeling myself. Cause I'ma get it up, and I'ma throw it out like goddamn it, I'm feeling myself. Up in the mirror look at me. The mirror be like, baby, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, you the shit, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, goddamn it, you the shit, you the shit, yes sir.
She say she love my body, she wanna make it pop. She say she love my body, she wanna kiss the top. She say she love my body, she love my lollipop. She say she love my body, she say she love my body. She say she love the party, girl I love your body. Why you on the table? Cause you know I'm watching. She say she love my body, so we can leave this party and go back to my hotel and don't stop for her body and don't stop in the lobby. I hope you massage me. I hope you can take it when I make you call me Poppy. The club about to close. Club about to close. I'm about to give you what you asking for. Order what you want, girl, it ain't no problem. I'ma tell the waitress that my baby need a bottle. Order what you want, said it ain't no problem. Got a piece of candy and it's all for you. She say she love her lollipop, she wanna make it pop. She say she love her lollipop, she wanna kiss the top. She say she love her lollipop, she love her lollipop. She say she love her lollipop, she say she love her lollipop. Got a lot of deals and hair like a dress. I wanna take you up a Gino, like a mad casino. I'm all fancy, yeah, I'm popping Pellegrino. I'm in the El Camino and I pull up on the scene. You know I'm a real OG and baby, I ain't from the T. You ain't messing with the click, though. Meet me on the 6th floor. No, you ain't a model, you should let me take some pics. Windows down, speakers loud. Look down at my sneakers now. Got so many features, got a creatures just to beat it now. I'm 50 for the necklace. Look down at my set list. Got your girlfriend at my crib watching Netflix. Let's just admit that I'm the bestest. Guess this, you ain't never ever on the guest list. Order what you want, girl, it ain't no problem. I'ma tell the waitress that my baby need a body. Order what you want, said it ain't no problem. Got a piece of candy and it's all for you. She said she love a lollipop, she wanna make it pop. She said she love a lollipop, she wanna kiss the top. She said she love a lollipop, she love a lollipop. She said she love a lollipop, she said she love a lollipop. Got a lot of pills, yeah, I got a dress. Wanna take you home, show you I'm the best. She said she love a lollipop, she love a lollipop. She said she love a lollipop, she said she love a
Ass everywhere, throw them dollars in the air. Bring your swimming girl, Juicy J the millionaire. She pop that pussy on me, I fell back in the chair. Bands and make her dance, Molly make her lose them underwear. Booty cheeks, I'm geek, you know it. All her friends are freaks, you know it. And I think she love me, I've been hitting it for a week. I drill it, slap it, silly, need a super freak like Mickey. I'm Rick James, bitch, I slip myself a Mickey. Got so much money in my pocket, with a real bad chick from the tropics. With silicone racks, with a real big ass, make a bounce it like hydraulics. Kevin Hart, I got purple on the plane. Let's call a boat, let's run a train. Trippy.
She said she love a lollipop, she wanna make it pop. She said she love a lollipop, she wanna kiss the top. She said she love a lollipop, she love a lollipop. She said she love a lollipop, she said she love a lollipop. Wanna take you home, show you I'm the best. She said she love a lollipop, she love a lollipop. She said she love a lollipop, she said she love a lollipop. You are with me, if you take my hand, baby, go to the place where you never see. Slow dance in the moonlight, just trying to set the mood right. Still wanna do it over and over. Quickly, wanna run with me now. Swiftly, just go me out. Steps go to your beat now, over and over. Just don't wait and wait and wait and do it back. I can see that I'd be lying back. Just wanna wait for a minute. Wait for a minute. Just wanna wait for a minute.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Yes. Now. Now you can hear me. Yeah, yes. Let's turn off the music. Hello. Welcome to this iOS meetup. It's hosted by us, QuizUp, and Takumi as well. It's great to see you all here. We're going to be listening to 4 talks today. Hopefully all of them really amazingly fun. Yeah, there's beer over there. You probably figured that out. The bathroom is over there, just outside there. And yeah, I think we'll just get this started. Our first talk is called Life in the Fastlane. And we are going to be doing that. I'm Hilmar and this is Alexander. right. So this talk is about iOS automation and the tool fastlane. For those of you that don't know, fastlane is really a set of tools for iOS that allow you to do a lot of things, and they make the entire workflow of just doing everything, testing, submitting, so much nicer than Apple managed to do. We used to, before we introduced Fastlane, everything was just hard. Submitting was really, it took a really long time, just doing all the steps, and the more complex your app gets, the more hard it gets. Takes a lot of time, and there's so many steps, so it's really error prone, and you just get really stressed out that you're releasing something incorrect, that you set some parameter incorrect, or you built the wrong thing, and when you're doing regression testing, like you're never 100% sure, like did I submit the correct thing? Am I testing the correct thing? Dealing with provisioning profile is really boring. I imagine a lot of you know that. And QuizUp has become quite complex, and there are like lots of other nuances linked to that. It's in 7 languages, and just handling the translations and the change logs in 7 different languages becomes a lot of boring manual labor. We submit a lot of builds into Hotkey app as well, and that's just soul-crushingly boring to do by hand, especially if you're doing it a couple times a day. Yeah, we have this light bulb here because we used an old show and it was a cool animation, but we thought of Fastlane, or someone else thought of Fastlane, really.
Yeah. So life before Fastlane was, as Hilmar described, pretty horrible, and it's a real shame that Apple, with their billions of dollars, can't produce a decent API to fix this. But there was a man from Germany called Felix. He thought otherwise, so he created Fastlane. Fastlane works behind the scenes as a headless browser, and it talks to private APIs of Apple. So in reality, it's just a huge shit mix behind the scenes, or I'm guessing it is. Fastlane is now owned by Twitter and is in the Fabric suite. It's 100% open source, has a lot of automation tasks like snapshot to take screenshots, site to download and install provisioning profiles, Gym to build your configurations and the app, and so on and so on. And you can see it has saved millions of hours. This is estimated, I guess. And yeah, so we use Fastlane at QuizUp, and Fastlane is divided into 2 things mostly: action and lanes. Action is simply a function that does one thing, isolated thing, and you can use it to isolate your behavior of the thing you want to automate. So here we have an example of a very simple lane. It updates our translations using an internal tool called Uhura. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. All it does is execute some shell command. If there were some changes, we commit them to Git, and we're done. Yeah, okay. Probably. Hello. Hello. Maybe okay. Is this better? Okay, good. And to call this action, you simply use this very simple syntax. You can create your own action by using Fastlane new action, and it will prompt you like, hey, what's the name of your action? What do you want it to do? And it will create a template for you. Lanes. They're pretty simple as well, just a set of actions that are run sequentially. Here's a simple lane. The first thing there is an action provided by fastlane itself. Then there are 2 custom ones, and the final thing there at the end is a custom lane we made. Hilmar will talk more about this later. So this is a rough summary of fastlane, and Hilmar will now tell you how we do this at QuizUp.
We really dislike doing manual tasks, especially like manual tasks in some boring web interfaces. So we just try to use it for everything we can, and it's also just really fun to build those lanes. It's like, yeah, those points, we use it for an internal hockey build, and we'll get more into that, how we use that later. We have an external beta build, which is our main beta. It's also in hockey app. We use it to run our unit tests, to lint our code. We use it to upload builds to S3 if we need like a one-off build to show someone. It's like the versioning and build numbers are completely contained in fastlane. We use it to update our translations, and most importantly, we use it to submit to the App Store, and that has been a huge win for us. I'm gonna tell you a little bit more on how we do that with our submission lane that we talked about before. If you can't see the code, like I'm gonna be like just walking through it. It's not paramount that you actually read the code. No one's meant to read this. This is the entire submit lane, and here we have a little bit bigger font size, but it's not going to get bigger than that. So if you can't see this, then you're screwed. What the submit IPA lane does is it starts by making sure that we are on the correct brands. Then it installs our CocoaPods. Then it uses the SCI tool we mentioned before, and it downloads the provisioning profile for our enterprise build, because this starts by sending a beta to Hockey App, which has quite a lot of users, and it's just really nice to be able to do a sanity check of like, okay, this is the same build as we submitted, and it has been in use for a couple of days. Is it crashing? So it feels much better to actually press the release button. So we start by downloading the provisioning profiles. Then we use Gym to build our enterprise scheme. And this just spits out a ready IPA file. Then we use the hockey tool to upload that to our hockey app beta. And like I said, like this just, it's amazing how little work you do to do those pretty complex things. Once that's done, we use SCI again to download our App Store provisioning profiles, build the App Store scheme. Then we use the hockey action again to just upload the DSIM file to Hockey App, because we use Hockey App for our live crashes as well. And this guy here, the deliver, he takes just everything. He takes the IPA, and you can put metadata into folders and stuff, and just takes what you've built and just uploads it to Apple. Once that's done, we alert various people in the company with a Slack tool, just letting them know that we've submitted a build, and they can go into Asana and see what's in the build, and they can go download the hockey app with that build. Then we just tag it so we know in our Git history what we released and push that. Yeah, I kind of forgot about. Yeah, we automated the change logs. We figured we were always just putting in stupid jokes anyway, so we might as well automate it. So we just, especially because QuizUp is in 7 languages, and like writing a joke every week and having it translated into 7 languages, getting that back, logging into iTunes Connect, inputting it there, it's just really boring. So we just wrote all the jokes at the same time, and we automated putting a joke every time. And yeah, that joke there is "Go to sleep, sweet bugs. It'll all be over soon." That was automated by Fastlane. Hopefully, maybe it'll come up with a feature that makes up those jokes as well. That's not ready yet. Yeah, this is like just alerts on Slack with which build was submitted and where you can see more details. Yeah, this used to be, like I said, this used to be a huge pain in the ass. We had like a 30-item checklist, and we always had a rule like 2 people have to do this because it's so boring. You're gonna screw up, and just yeah. It's 2 steps now. You just go into Jenkins and run the. We just have a Jenkins job per lane, so the Jenkins job is just nothing but calling the lane. So you go into Jenkins, run the submit lane, then use this tool called watch build, which just monitors when your build is done processing, whatever that means. But yeah, Apple takes like an hour to process your build, which makes it hard to have it 1 step. That's why it's 2, but still hope that we can get to 1 someday. Once that's done, you just go into iTunes Connect, pick the build, and submit. And this is amazingly easy, and just it's everything is defined in code, so it's not gonna screw up ever.
We use Fastlane not only to submit to Apple, but also in our everyday workflow. We work from our master branch to create a new feature and branch out into a feature branch. When you're done working and we submit a pull request, Jenkins picks it up, runs Fastlane, and if everything is good and the code reviewer is happy with it, it gets merged back to master, where again Fastlane, Jenkins will call Fastlane to submit a new internal hockey app build, so we can test it like 10 minutes later, and that build is available to everyone inside the company. We try to stay out of Jenkins as much as we can because we really hate the UI. I don't know if you're familiar with Jenkins, but it really sucks. So what we do is we create scripts which are stored at the same place as our main code base, and Jenkins just calls that. Those scripts are really simple. All they do is execute Fastlane, which in return will run our unit test and lint our code. So we don't merge code in that doesn't pass these checks. Hilmar blogged about this, our Fastlane setup. That's available on blog.quizup.com. Fastlane also has examples. Many companies have examples on Fastlane, like their Fastlane setup. You can go check that out at Fastlane/examples. And we actually made a pull request to that repo this week, so we can check out how we do Fastlane. Are there any questions? The question is, are we using it for screenshots as well? The answer is no, we aren't using it for screenshot yet.
Like the problem with that is like our app, like almost every app I assume, like heavily relies on like network requests, and like the hard part with that would be to build some sort of middle layer that like injects the correct data. Actually, that would be like really useful and something we hope to do one day, because like we have screenshots in 7 languages, and that makes it even more important to like take the correct screenshots. It actually happened to us that we like took a screenshot in Spanish and like of a post, and like nobody understood the post, and the post was like, yeah, QuizUp sucks and I'm gonna kill you all, and it's not a great thing to have in the App Store. Are there any more questions? The question is there anything we would like to add to Fastlane? Are you talking about like our setup or just the project itself? Yeah, what we've been striving to do is just have the one button submit, like just press a button and it submits. And what's holding that up is the processing time at Apple. Like it usually takes about an hour, but it can take way longer than that. And like having scripts that have to wait for that long just is hard, and they become flaky. Uh, is there anything else? Nothing else comes to mind right now. Like we usually just if something, if we think of something, we just try it. You know, any other questions? The question is, we use Jenkins. Do we have like local machines, or the answer to that is yes. Unfortunately, we have the built machines in the basement. It might be beneficial to try to get it into AWS or something, but it's working right now. But it has been a huge pain to like get this working nicely, and like when the El Capitan came out, just everything broke. But we haven't. It's not on our roadmap currently to change, like to a different build setup. The question is, have we taken a look at Jenkins 2.0? The answer is no. Yeah, I told you there was going to be someone here that loves Jenkins. There's always one or two. Any other questions? Okay, I will probably just move on then. Just thank you for listening to our talk. You can clap now. Yeah. Yeah, like feel free to grab as many beers as you want until they're finished. Our next talk is from Stokkur. It's going to be Ívar and Gunnar. They're going to tell us about iOS development at Stokkur.
Hello, hello. All right. Hi, guys. My name is Gunnar, and with me today is Ívar. We come from Stokkur, and we are going to be spending the next few minutes to tell you about how we develop and how we maintain multiple iOS projects, and how we do it with a remote team. All right. To start with, here are some of our apps. I hope you know some of them. Yay! We both have internal apps like Alfred and Be Iceland, and we also work for clients like Strætó and Nova and Dominos. So there's a lot going on and a lot happening. All right. So at Stokkur, we are four iOS developers. Me and Tuni are stationed here in Iceland, and then there are two others that work from Prague. When we start a new project, then it's important to think like, how are we going to work? with the remote team that's stationed abroad. And usually we team up one iOS developer located here, we are like the juniors, and one that's located abroad. So there's a lot of communication going on all day long, every day, you know. And most of the communication goes through some kind of a messaging tool. We use Skype a lot, screen share, sometimes, unfortunately, email, but hey, what can you do? And yeah, it's important to like keep the communication always going, because some of the projects that we do are quite big and require a lot of teamwork. And you have to be like always willing to assist your teammate, always willing to give advice, take advice, tell each other that you did something really good or something not so good. Because like being a developer, you're always struggling with something. You're trying to find a bug, you're trying to solve a problem, trying to understand why something is working, why something is not working. So it's important to keep a close connection to your teammates. All right, so a common project setup. When we start a new project, there's always some boilerplate code. Things like that are some kind of a network manager class. A session manager contains some methods to tell you if the user is logged in or something like that. We have utility classes that tell you what kind of device you're running, stuff like that. And then recently we began using a thing called schemes through Xcode, where we actually create a couple of schemes like dev scheme, a prod scheme, staging scheme, and then you can switch between schemes, and then each scheme has some kind of a specific configuration, like the dev scheme could talk to the dev server or something like that. And you can also specify it a lot more to fit each developer's needs based on what he's working on or something like that. We're big into Fabric also. Each new project has Fabric, where we use the Crashlytics feature for crash report handling. We monetize our apps using Fabric and to see the growth, and to see what features are most used in our apps, and just overall monetization. Monitoring. All right. Also, with each project, Jira and Confluence, which are tools built by Atlassian, are used quite a lot. The actual project management goes through Jira, where we define, what are we currently working on in this app, what has been done, what's going to be done, and what we need to do, and like keep control of the workflow. Basic Scrum board, yes. And we use Confluence for documentation when necessary. So we try to be as agile as we can. All right, then some code base and some facts. In fact, we gave out an app in 2015. It's called WAP, and it was the official first auto layout app that we built, 2015. And all of our projects are built with Obj-C to this day. We haven't actually started Swift that much, but we are in fact taking tiny steps, one at a time, beginning with some UI tests for the Klukk app, which is a recent app, where we actually integrated fastlane and did the snapshot thing that we were talking about here just before. Yeah, the screenshots. We tried that out, and that was pretty nice, and probably we will use that more in the future.
This year we started a thing called Freestyle Fridays, and that is the first Friday of every month, where we basically work on a topic or research something that we ourselves find interesting. And the purpose of this is basically to to just learn new technology and research something cool that you find or hear about. I personally really like this. I think this is my most anticipated work day of the month. Here you can see a bunch of projects that I've been working on and some of my coworkers. To start off, I tested Project Islandwood, which ports an iOS app to a Windows phone. It looked really promising, and like the first steps that we made were to convert just a Hello app app to a Windows phone app, and that was pretty smooth. Then we started by converting the 112 emergency app to Windows Phone, and then we found out that the bridge doesn't support CocoaBots, and that is a huge no-no for us since every project that we have contains CocoaBots. We also discovered fastlane through these Freestyle Fridays. I think Hilmar was always telling me about the fastlane setup here at QuizUp, so we wanted to try it out. Dori is using Jim in the new projects that Dori, our server guy who's sitting over there, he is using Jim in our new projects, and I think he likes it. I really like the snapshot thing, apart from the actual UI tests, because they are, well, at least in iOS 9.3, they are kind of buggy. We also been looking into CocoaBots and template-based code generation, which I will talk about a little bit more later. And what I have been working on, and Gunnar as well, when he is, like Gunnar is a student at the Reykjavík University, so he is just sometimes at work with me here in Iceland. And what we have been working on is just trying to get more automation into the company. And this is basically the same concept as Hilmar and Alli were talking about earlier. Like, we don't want to do everything manual because it's fucking boring. And what I want to talk about next is the template-based code generation that we discovered, I think, last month. There's a tool called Swagger, which allows you to both generate code and documentation based on templates. The initial steps that you should take is probably start by looking at the documentation, how you can generate that. That should be relatively easy. I spoke to the lead iOS developer last week, and he was trying this out, and he said it looked really promising. He said that he could probably generate data models pretty easily from this tool, and we could probably also generate client-side network code in our iOS applications. For example, something like this, where you get a product ID, product name from a product ID which you send to the API and get something back. This is just a small example of what you could probably achieve. We haven't actually implemented this in a new project yet, but I think once we have if you have a relatively small project and we have some time to work on it, probably it will be an internal project, because often with the customer projects there are a lot of time constraints and so on. The next thing I wanted to talk about is our new way of distributing beta builds to customers and us ourselves. The old way was just to use TestFlight, which is, I don't know, okay, I guess. But the new thing that we're using now is Fabric Beta on our stage environment. We distribute beta stage through Fabric Beta. And how it works is that when we merge the development branch of an application into the master branch, we do that with a pull request. And once the pull request has been accepted, the Bamboo server automatically builds the new master build, uploads the build to Fabric Beta, and from there we can have a simple net UI interface just to add people to it and send them an email that a new build is available. They get a push, I think they get a push notification or an email. Yeah, they get a push notification, and then they can enter their Fabric app in their phone and just download the new build through that. And this is really convenient if you have a large, for example, let's say 50, that's big on an Icelandic corporate scale, I guess. If you have 50 testers in a company, this is really convenient. But we also, our QA tester, she tests our builds on prod with TestFlight. What I've been working on the past month is basically doing our own CocoaBots. which is I think is a really cool idea. And I started out by packing our utilities class into a CocoaPod and just uploading that to our private repo. What I did last Friday on the last Freestyle Friday was checking out our because in our apps we have a lot of credit cards payment views. For example, when you have to enter a name, credit card number, CVC, and an expiration date, and these views are all really similar in for example, you have this in Nova and probably some other ones. But what we actually want to do is just pack this credit card picker into a CocoaPod, add some customizable methods to it. For example, what would you like the font to be, the color scheme, and so on. And this is though still under development since we haven't actually made it general yet. The CocoaPod right now is just commented out code, but it's under development. Future work in this area would probably be to identify more common UI elements that we have, because when you have an app catalog of, I don't know, 20, 30 apps, you have a bunch of stuff that has good reuse potential, but it is hard work to first identify them, then generalize them, then pack them into a CocoaPod. But I think it would be really handy for us, because right now when we're starting a new project, we always have to copy everything from the old project, remove the dependent code on the old project, and add new code. What is also on the roadmap is to create some sort of new project template to have in a Git repository. Because if you would have a project template that would just install this utilities class into your project automatically, create schemes for you that you can just fill in yourselves with the info and stuff like this, really speeds up the development process, because the first day or two you're always sorting out bugs or removing a storyboard template, inserting exif files instead, and just boring stuff that you have to take care of before you start the project. Common challenges that we face is, for example, working with third-party backends. That adds another remote layer. So maybe you're at work and you don't talk with your coworkers all day because they are not relevant to your work, basically, at the office. And I mean, it's just remote is hard. Some of our old projects are non-arc. For example, my first project that I started on Stokkur was non-arc, and I hope I didn't introduce any memory leaks, but let's see. It's also quite hard to multitask between projects because, for example, you're maybe working on Eir before lunch. After lunch, you're working on Dominos, and before you have to go home, you actually have to patch Strætó. So you may be working on 3 projects which are written in 3 different iOS, 5, 6, 7, 8. And yeah, it can be really challenging. Our senior developers at Prague, they really insist on writing reusable code. And when you're a new developer, that doesn't come really naturally to you. It's something that you have to learn. And that is hard, but you can really see the value in it after you actually learned it and started up a new project. And then you can see, oh yes, Gunnar wrote some awesome generalizable code in the ClickUp that I can now integrate into my new project. So that is really handy. Another thing is time constraints, because we are often, I think this is though a general problem that we are not alone in facing. But I mean, if you promise a customer something to be delivered in the 1st of June, it's not good if you don't deliver it on that date. So we are constantly struggling with this, but I think we manage it pretty well. Any questions? Yes. The question was, have you considered React Native? Our web developers were actually checking that out last Friday. And I know that some of them are just building it in their own time, looking at it in their own time. But I really doubt that we will move to that soon. But I guess I think you can have mixed projects with Obj-C and React Native. So that could potentially be something that we could try. We just haven't looked that much into it, so we don't really know yet. Any other questions? Well, we did the UI test in Swift Kluk, and we have been doing some pet projects ourselves in Swift. But at least for now, we aren't starting up a new project anytime soon. I think like starting new, at least in the next few months. But I think it would probably be a lot of fun to learn it. There was another question from Juan. Sorry, one more time. Like during one work day or during 1 week, or I say 1 week, probably 3 or 4 would probably be a reasonable number. Like it kind of depends though. If we're kickstarting off a new project, then maybe we're kind of focused on that for a really long time and focus our efforts into that. But if we're in kind of a maintenance phase and we're just patching things and we're not developing anything new, then we probably 3 or 4 projects. One more question. Yeah. The question was like you were doing both Android and iOS, and how do you manage so many projects with both iOS and Android? We have both an iOS and Android. The Android team is located here in Iceland. There are 2 people, and I think 1 developer in Prague as well. Basically, we try to keep them as synchronized as we can. For example, you can't always have iOS elements in Android and vice versa. So this is just something that we solve on a case-by-case basis, I would say. We are trying out new methods to solve this problem. For example, with the Swagger, like if we can generate data modules for both iOS and Android in Swagger, that eliminates a little bit of the duplicate work that we are both doing. So we are looking into steps on getting better in this area. The question was, do you design one type for iOS and one design for Android? And the answer is no, we only use one. Yeah, iOS. But this is the Android developers don't really like this, but I like it. Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks to Ívar and Gunnar from Stokkur. Next up, we're going to be listening to Steinn and Björn from Takumi, and they're going to tell us the Takumi story.
Okay, so we're gonna tell you about the Takumi story, or the story of iOS development. That's not the first one. All right, so we are a young startup, 1 year old, and I think that we have like hit a lot of walls during our iOS story and have some pretty interesting moments to share.
We've made a lot of mistakes, and this is a great venue to share some of the fun little mistakes that you inevitably run into, even if you've built an app before and you kind of you think you know everything. And so this is just a story to kind of share our little journey from being just an idea until we're an app in the App Store and a business. Björn here is our lead iOS developer. I'm the CTO. So I'm here just kind of, to fill in with background, but he's really the iOS expert. I'm not.
So I'm gonna be talking and he's gonna be interrupting me. All right, so what's Takumi? We are basically a platform or a marketplace where brands can run campaigns. And on the other end, we have our iOS app, which is for Instagram influencers. So if you have over 1,000 followers, you can join our platform, see the campaigns in the app, reserve your spot, then you post your image on Instagram, submit it to us, and we give you money. simple. All right. So this is our rough timeline. The company was founded in April 2015, last year, and there were like a few months of initial development and basic stuff. And then we submitted our app to the App Store in October. And then we launched in November. But in between, we actually rewrote the whole thing, which is kind of an interesting move. Like the last few months have been filled with things like iterations on development, basic stuff, and now we are looking to move to React Native. More about that later. This is our iOS stack. We're using Swift. I had some experience with Swift and also the iOS developer who started before me. So we preferred that over Obj-C. We knew that the guys here at QuizUp were using reactive Cocoa, so we decided to copy that. We're using Cocoa pods for dependencies, and also Fabric and Fastlane, like most of you here, I guess. Those are great tools. We're using Fastlane for all sorts of stuff, beta builds, screenshots, tests. Yeah, so that's like, they've already told you it's great. Okay, we have a development environment, naturally, where we test things, we demo our app with this, and we sometimes, like when we have parties, we use the opportunity to do some QAing. So we create campaigns that are competitive and like participate in them ourselves. That can be really fun. I have one example. Yeah, so it's not just bullshit, but we have some like funny campaigns in there. Like one day I was at the office and all of a sudden everyone is taking selfies with me. And I'm like, what the hell? So yeah, we had a campaign for selfies with me. I was like, I'm really popular. Then we had another one where we tried to do birds in shoes, which is a really interesting concept, I think. I like that one. Yeah, so we have these environments. And yeah, let's go to the point where we actually submitted our app. We had barely functional build. We weren't really happy with it, but it worked. And we decided to submit it to check if Apple had like a problem with our concept. Like we're doing advertising, they might say, you can't do that. So that would be a problem.
The app was functional, but it was leaking everything in every possible direction. Yeah, we might have released it.
We had some code stink, so we didn't want to release this, but we wanted to check if Apple was cool with us. And it got approved, and we just rejected it. Now we went to the rewrite. So as I said, we weren't happy with the code base. I was now the single only developer in the company for iOS. Yeah, so like he was on vacation and I used the opportunity to convince Jökull, who is here somewhere, to let me do a rewrite. And he said, okay, if you can do it quick. So yeah, I did some crunching. One night at the office, sleeping, that was like 50% just to be able to tell the story. So yeah, but we did it and we don't regret it. So yeah, now we had a build that we were happy with and we launched it, version 1.0.2. And signups rolled in. It was really fun to look at it. We had a Slack channel and you can see a screenshot there. Like you see all these people with a lot of followers coming in every second. That was really thrilling, and was fun to know that like all these important people were like touching your app. And I was like, ooh. Yeah, so the sign up. Yeah, so it was like, yeah, it was like bam, bam, bam. It was great. But then we, yeah, yeah, but then we realized like, okay, not all these users are desired users. Some of them have fake followers, stuff like that. But that was just like a server thing to handle or something. So I didn't really worry about that, and everything was working fine. But then we looked at our analytics, and we noticed that some people, about 20%, were actually getting the old build that we submitted but never released. And we noticed this because users were saying like, this isn't working and stuff like that. And we were like, can you send us a screenshot? And we got a screenshot. And it was the old fucking build. It was terrible. And I mean, this wasn't functional because we had changed the API. We called Apple and they were like, yeah, so what's your problem? And we explained it to them. And the guy said like, okay, just ask for an expedited review of your new build because we had another build ready for review. And we hope that by releasing that, we would somehow divert users from getting this build. Yeah, which actually happened. But they said like, yeah, ask for an expedited review. And it's really important that you say in the description that this is costing you money. That's the keyword. So they were like telling us how to exploit the communication with them, which was, yeah. So that was weird. And this was a really bad first impression for some users. All right, but that got resolved. And yeah. Yeah, so after launch, typical things were happening. We tried to submit every few weeks, doing some bug fixes and UX improvement, design changes, did things like notification patches and stuff. Uh, okay, it was a good idea. All right, and we used the opportunity of like semi-dead time to do some automation with fastlane, which is a great investment, like everyone has been saying. And yeah, we were also trying to like improve our confidence when we were releasing. It's always kind of hard to press the submit for review button, knowing that you might have broken something. Yeah. Hmm. And one day we got a report from a user saying, hey, I can't see my data anymore. Like my gig history is gone. And we were like, that's weird. And Steinn looked in the database, all the data was there. And he tried like querying the API using this person's session, all the data was there. And we were like, what the hell is this? And we got more of these reports over the day. And then we realized, holy shit, we actually released a build that talks to the development server. And everyone was seeing our stupid campaigns. Like that one. You know Alibaba and Mandy? We had a campaign called Beat Mandy from Alibaba. But the thing is, people were actually like reserving spots. Like, yeah, that's cool. And you see the Microsoft one at the bottom. This one bought it. He did a gig. notice the caption, "We all have greatness in us, and with the right tools, there are no limits." That's my favorite gig to date, I think. No. We never paid him. Hopefully, this describes kind of how we felt. This is one of our developers, like querying how many gigs had been reserved. A lot of them, as you can see. Wear sneakers, yeah. And we were like, they are definitely not getting money, right? Like by accident. So that didn't happen, and we resolved this pretty quickly by just changing our DNS configuration and stuff like that. And I want to say that these kinds of things are really hard with Apple because you can't just patch this immediately if it's on the client side. If you have a bug on the client side, you have to submit a new build and wait, right? So this is more what our test data looks like today. It's more like obviously fake and inspired by Rick and Morty. Little bits. Okay, so we learned some lessons from this. So don't press submit lightly. That's really important. Yeah, or that. Use debug flags and preprocessor macros to determine the server to use. Yeah, in retrospective, yeah, and in retrospect, like this was a really stupid mistake that should have never happened, and by automating this, it will never happen again. And we also learned that, yeah, whatever we put out there, people are gonna participate in it because they're getting money. All right, so that brings us to the now. We are currently working on porting our app to React Native, and I was at first really skeptical about React Native, like probably many native developers. But I've personally noticed some really big advantages listed here. Mainly, like I hate using the interface builder and auto layout. Like when you have a complex UI and you have elements that are conditionally displayed and stuff like that, changing the layout can be hell. You have to change all the UI constraints, stuff like that. I just hate it. So declaring it with JSX or some kind of markup is actually far better, in my opinion. With React Native, you get hot reloading. So say you're changing a button, the look of a button, you don't have to like build your project every time. That's every iOS developer's hell, I think. Yeah, so it's really redundant to build the project every time you're checking out your UI changes or whatever. So with hot reloading, that becomes, I want to say 100 times faster. And then, of course, you have a rich collection of modules and components, and you get to not work in Xcode, which crashes all the time and is slow. So these are the advantages we have already noticed. Some others that we hope to experience are being able to instantly update our app and patch bugs like the one with the dev server. Have you heard of code push? So basically you can update your React Native app instantly and push it out to all users. And you think Apple probably won't like allow this, but surprisingly they're just happy with it. They allow this. So you're basically cutting the review process, which is pretty great. We should be relatively quick developing our Android app. And all our web engineers are also mobile developers. This is great.
Yay, more responsibility.
Yeah. All right. So thank you and applaud. Any questions? I'm not really sure because we haven't used it yet. It was the hopes and dreams sections. Oh yeah, the question was how does code push actually work? But yeah, so I think it basically goes like this. The React Native app loads like a JavaScript bundle from a server, and I guess that code push stores your bundle somewhere. So when you launch your app, it fetches the bundle, and then the developers can just update it on the server whenever they want. So when the users launch the app and a new bundle is available, it will just fetch that. Yeah. And another benefit you get there is like you kind of force users to update. You won't have to deal with backwards compatibility. Hmm. Yeah. Mhm. Uh, and it's free, right? It's free, right? Yeah. Hmm. Ah, cool. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So that's I guess mainly for when you also release actually in the App Store. Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions? Yep. So how are we working with fake followers? That's not really my field. You can maybe ask Jökull over there after the talks, and he can tell you all about it. Yep. Pain point. Um, I'm not really sure. Like, what bothers me a little bit is that like some of the things I'm using aren't really the native things. Um, like the list view isn't a real UI table view, but that's just like because I'm a native developer and I'm like that's superior. But yeah, I'm willing to bend a little. Yep.
Yeah, are we using the Instagram API or do we scrape it? So actually, started off with a mix. So in some cases we used, well, like most cases we use the API and then we're scraping as well. But we're kind of ridding ourselves of all API dependence right now. So that's yeah. Well, I should just be open about it. I mean, Instagram is changing their guidelines on like the purposes of apps, and even though we don't feel like our app is in any way detrimental to Instagram or their goals in terms of like what kind of service they're trying to provide to their users. And if you could interpret it in such a way that we're building an ad network on top of it, which is not the way we perceive ourselves, but in case they do, we want to be safe and not get blocked from using the well. If we do get blocked, we want to have our own plan. Any more uncomfortable questions? All right. Oh, I'll let Björn take this one.
So I really like Swift, and I think it's way superior to Objective-C, for example. Um, I also like JavaScript, like we're using ES6. So well, I think old school JavaScript is shit, but with Babel and ES6, it's pretty great, I think, and not that not that different really from Swift, if you think about it. Yep.
Yeah, it is improving, but Swift is a very complicated language. It has a plethora of features. It's like really fully backwards compatible with Objective-C, and it has closures and all kinds of fancy schmancy crap. Sorry, I'm a bit old school. And well, I mean, if you have a complicated language, it just means that the compiler is going to be slow, especially initially. And I mean, if you look back at the history of languages, like C++ compilers were ridiculously slow not that long ago. So there's nothing strange about it being slow. It's a new complicated language, so the compiler is slow. Also, SourceKit tends to crash. Well, I mean, I haven't really been working in Swift now for a few months, but I remember like I mean, I'm the kind of person that likes to use Vim and GCC for everything. So then I'm like running Xcode, and it's the spinning beach ball is there half the time. The storyboard is like, you can't even touch it without like there being 500 changes to your repo. It crashes a lot. Every time there's an update of anything from Apple, everything goes to shit. The compiler is really slow. If you make a UI change, you have to recompile it. I mean, like React Native, it's going to have its warts. We're going to have probably a more fun talk in a few months when we've actually released the app using React Native. And then we can actually talk about, like, it's no fun to talk about rainbows. We all want to, gripe about something, right? So we're going to have something to gripe about at that point in time. But right now, it's just, it's peaches. Any more questions?
All right. Thanks to Steinn and Björn from Takumi. We have one more talk left and a lot of beer also, so to step up your beer game. The last talk is from Jói, the CTO of QuizUp, and he's going to talk about our new Swift mocking library. Mock it yourself.
All right. Started out by destroying the setup. That's a good start. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about how we transitioned from testing in Objective-C to testing in Swift. QuizUp is a huge Objective-C code base, and but we've gradually started working in Swift and are really excited to start working in React Native, but we haven't really found the correct path to do so yet, but we keep trying. But yeah, so, and one of the things that we needed with QuizUp to benefit from all the automation that we built is to have a really good test suite and confidence when we use the automation. Without that, nothing that Hilmar and Alli described would work, because we would just be sending shit into the void. So I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about the state of how we did testing for Objective-C, and then like the difficulties that we ran into when we started writing the same kind of test in Swift and how we solved it. Where's the clicker? Good. Yeah, there it is. All right, testing at QuizUp. I feel like I'm always talking about testing. I think this is probably my 5th talk about testing. The first one was that we didn't have any testing at all, and then we migrated into a lot of tests. And this is a continuation of that, my life story. So the state of the union, like the QuizUp code base is 96% Objective-C, and it's up to 4% Swift. We've been quite diligent at writing Swift for the last couple of weeks, except we would be better at it if Xcode wouldn't constantly be crashing at us. And yeah, so we share the pain with developing a hybrid app. Objective-C and Swift is not a fun thing. Even though Swift is a fun language, developing it is not really fun. We currently have 6,000 unit tests that run in 40 seconds. Most of them are Objective-C tests, but we have like 34 Swift files. We've kind of figured out a really nice way that we love how we test things in Obj-C. We focus on really clear unit tests, which means that like if you write a class, you write a test suite to that class. You try to keep your test method small, so like each test is kind of one assertion at most, and we break the Obj-C style guide with tests. We write them like we would write Python code for readability, so it's like lowercase with underscore separating the words, and we make sure that we mock all non-trivial dependencies using Aussie mock. This allows us to each test completely focus on that single class. Like the dependencies are just all stupid. There are a lot of benefits from mocking, and it's a debate that we could have. But from our experience, mocking has been a really successful way for us to kind of have a really fast, reproducible test suite. By mocking, you make sure that every test is consistent. You can eliminate all randomness, all flakiness. You just make sure like all your dependencies behave as you want them to behave. It's really easy to simulate really hard edge cases. Like you look at your code and you know that it logically could go that path. Now with mocking, you can really simulate that and make sure that you don't have to spend a lot of time QAing that edge case. You can just verify it in a test and verify that you handled it correctly. And most importantly, it removes slow dependencies. Like if your test suite becomes slow, then you stop running it, and running it becomes painful, and you lose the benefit of all the cool automation you could have on top of it. And one of the things that I think is most important for mocking is that like sometimes you write tests that like verify that you call things in a certain way, and you could argue that those tests would not be valuable because you're kind of testing the implementation. But we can argue for that. You're embedding domain knowledge. Like when you're writing the code, you know everything about it. You know how you want to interact with this SDK. You read all the documentation. And then like 6 months later, someone comes in, looks at it, hey, this looks stupid, and changes it. If there was no test, then he wouldn't know that things are supposed to be that way. And by having a test that kind of tests the implementation detail a little bit, you can like make that developer ask himself like, okay, there's a reason, there's a test here that's making sure that this is called in that way. Am I completely sure that I want to do this thing? And then he can make the action and changing that test. So that's like why we often mock on just how we call a third-party SDK, how you call into the Apple stuff, because we want to just embed the knowledge of that developer at that point in time. This is kind of like a classical example of like, I think 90% of the QuizUp Obj-C tests are something like this. You're testing a class, and that class has a dependency. And that dependency, I did a cool stuff here. So you're testing a class, which has a dependency, which has like a slow expansion method that your class uses. And you want to write a test for a method on that class. We use Aussie mock to create a mock for the dependency. And using Aussie mock, that's really simple. Just a one line pass in the class, and Aussie mock will generate a mock for you. Then you pass that mock into the class that you're testing. And then, in most of our cases, we want to expect that you call the slow and expansive method with some parameter, and you can, if you want, you can stub and return a fixed value. Then you just call the class method under test, and you can assert the return value, and you can verify that this method was actually called. And if it wasn't called, then this test will fail. And like in most cases, if in true unit cases, like this is a template for that kind of test. And I think like 90% of the QuizUp tests are tests like this. Really easy to write, give you a lot of coverage and confidence that like the code that you write behaves the way you want it to behave. Then we moved into Swift. And Swift has really many benefits, like much stronger type saving, but it breaks this way of testing in subtle ways. We can mostly test the same way. We can have unit tests, we can have one test per suite, like this doesn't change, but we can't use Aussie mock. It's impossible to create a mocking framework for Swift because Swift only has read reflection, which means that you can't generate classes at runtime. Everything has to be statically compiled, which makes Obj-C impossible. So if we want to maintain the same level of clean unit tests, we would have to create mocks using subclasses. And that works, but is rather painful. So to give the same example in Swift without any helpers, just boilerplate Swift. We have the same kind of dependency, but instead of using that one line of Obj-C mock, we kind of have to just create our own mock. And this could be painful in many ways. Like this example is simple because it's just a single method. But if you have many methods and you want to return many different return values, this gets exponentially more boilerplatey. And also, if you have a class that actually does something important, you have to override all of the methods to get like a kind of a clean slate. Just create an empty fake object. The test itself is kind of similar. You just create a dependency, pass it in, call it, and assert the return value. But we saw really quickly, and we wrote tests for this like this for a couple of weeks, that this gets really, really boring. So the amount of boilerplate is so high that writing tests that normally is fun and kind of gives us confidence was just becoming really boring. So we kind of looked around and saw like what other people were doing and what was kind of possible within the constraints, and kind of figured out a better way forward. And we call our solution mock it yourself, which is kind of what you do, because there's no silver bullet here. You can't generate the mocks dynamically. You just have to mock it yourself, but we can kind of be clever about it and cut down on the boilerplate. So we created a manual mocking framework for Swift. It has all the basic features: verifying method calls, rejecting method calls, and stubbing return values. And it allows us to write tests like this. Same dependency, but instead of using all the standard boilerplate, we can just make the class implement the protocol, mock it yourself, add a single property that's called the call handler, and then we can register calls. By registering a call, we can both stub and verify and reject. So like you can create your mock once, just register all the calls, which takes a short time and is like the minimum amount of boilerplate that you need. And then it allows us to write tests like this. To stub, we can just call stub. And then to verify, we can verify. So it's like a similar syntax to Mockito or some of the Java mocking frameworks. Which kind of is the best thing that you can do at the moment in Swift, and allows us to kind of keep on writing tests that we've known are valuable, but do it quickly. Don't spend a lot of time writing the boilerplate. This library is obviously not, it's pretty immature still. It's missing a couple of features. The error messages kind of suck. I think we can make a slightly nicer syntax. We haven't really figured that there are some ways probably to cut even more down on the boilerplate. And what we're really missing is a way to kind of intercept the method call. Like in many mocking frameworks, you can do like and do. Like if someone calls this method on a mock, you do something else. Like, which is hard in Swift because you can't really swizzle classes, but I think we could probably work ourselves around that. Our library is heavily influenced by a library called SwiftMock, which kind of has the same basic idea, but didn't really follow through on it. It's like it's not quite maintained and it was missing a lot of features, and it didn't really like use all the power of Swift. So you kind of had to extend the library to kind of work with your code. So we kind of took the basic idea from that and worked from there. And then we ran into another library that we could have probably used called Mock5, which solves the same problem kind of, but does it in a slightly alien syntax. It's different. It's not the familiar verify, expect, reject syntax that you normally use. But this basically has allowed us to like proficiently write Swift code, like as fast as Xcode allows us. Any questions? Bara samtíma. Okay, so the question is like, what's your methodology on testing? Like, do you use TDD? And like, who kind of decides what to test or what to not test? We basically, like, it depends on the developer. Like, some developers use TDD kind of religiously, some don't. Our kind of rule of thumb is that the code you write has tests. And we're kind of not stricter with that. Like, we're not looking at coverage statistics or anything. We just like, we've kind of learned a feeling like a PR has tests. And when you look at a PR with tests, you know if it's valuable tests or not. We are not testing religiously anything. We just, you write the test that you feel give you confidence to your code. And like, and we call out if we feel like tests are missing, if some like, and often like some of our developers just look at the PR and read the tests and see like, okay, this is what the PR is about, and then look at the code. Like, so it kind of depends. That's kind of the answer, but we don't merge code without tests. But we there's no limit of like it has to have this amount of coverage. Just what you feel comfortable about submitting with. Okay. So I saw a question there. Yeah, Juan. We have mostly, yeah, most of our new code is in Swift. Like, there's nothing really stopping us from writing Swift code except for like Xcode breaking down on us. And sometimes, like when we're under pressure, we just decide to not risk it, but we try it. Like every new code, we try it, and we are slowly rewriting stuff to move more to Swift, because like we've just seen that even if the tooling is horribly broken, you can write better code in Swift. More questions? All right. Then I'm gonna pull that stunt. One more thing. We've open sourced this library. You can go to Play Vanilla Games, mock it yourself, and get it today for $3.99. And I really, like, if you're writing Swift code, I really encourage you to try it out and open up some improvements on it. I think like it will help you write better and more robust Swift code. Thank you.
All right, that's all the talks that we have for today. But you can feel free to stay here and chat and finish the beers and just, yeah, if you want to ask more questions to any of our speakers or just whatever. Thank you.